first guest today is one of my heroes for sure, Dick DeGuerin, or as I refer to him as Dick DeGuerin. But I want to go through a little bit of your history and then some of your more celebrated cases. All right?
Fire away.
All right. So your dad was a lawyer in Austin.
He was. He never practiced trial law. He was a more administrative lawyer, and he practiced a lot of politics.
Word has it that he worked with LBJ on occasion?
They were very close.
How did you know LBJ as a kid?
I did.
What was that like?
Oh, he was terrific. He just as charming and as smart as, of course, I was a kid.
Right.
But he lived in our neighborhood for a while early on, and we would go over there for backyard barbecues.
I just stumbled across on the interweb the celebrated LBJ conversation with the Hager pant. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's the one where he said, "Hey, Joe, I need some of them new khakis that you make for me, and I need them to have a lot of room down in my crotch." Where your balls hang.
It's classic. And also with us today is a guest questioner, the world famous Michael Berry. So if you want to jump in anytime and ask Mr. DeGuerin a question, please do so.
First, I'm just going to take in the moment. Two legal titans.
Well, one anyway.
But I was talking to me and Dick.
Fair enough. All right. So did you know you wanted to be a lawyer growing up, Dick?
Well, my dad was a lawyer, and so that was something that I knew from the get-go, and it seemed like a good way to stay in school a little bit longer. And I tested well. I didn't study well, but I tested well, and I got into undergraduate school at the University of Texas in a Plan 2, which I didn't know that was a big deal. And I got into law school real easily because we had two tests. One was the regular law school LSAT, and the other one was the University of Texas admissions test, law school, and I aced both of those. I didn't do so well in my grades, but I enjoyed school a lot.
And what's the age difference between you and Mike?
Mike, my brother, was almost 4 years younger.
Okay. And he passed
3 years and 11 months.
He passed in 24 or 25?
He passed in 24.
Okay. And y'all were, needless to say, close as two brothers could get.
Yep.
There wasn't a sibling rivalry that you typically associate with?
Yes, there was. I was an only child, until he came along, and so I was jealous. I think, but at 3 years old, what do you know? It's just an intuitive thing, and so I was his big brother for a long time, and I lorded it over him, but I also took care of him.
Okay. Now, did you beat his ass on occasion, like my big brother beat my ass on occasion?
Yeah, but
only if he needed it.
My parents would step in.
All right, so you get out of law school. You have middle of the road grades. I'm taking from your last
That's
answer.
Being very charitable. I got out, and I did ace the bar exam. I came in number 3 on
Really?
the bar exam. Yeah.
And you applied to, but did not get hired by Butler Binion. Am I recalling that right?
What happened was I came to Houston because my buddy Grant Rohn, who went through law school with me, said, "Come on to Houston. There's money falling off the trees." And so I came and started interviewing around. Got some good interviews with some of the big firms, and one of them was Butler and Binion. And I was very impressed with the people I met there. Jack Binion, who was one of the named partners, was a hell of a trial lawyer.
Right.
And he interviewed me and said, you don't have the grades for us to hire you right out of law school, but you go get some experience and come back and talk to us. So I went to the DA's office. Luckily, got a job with Frank Briscoe, who was a DA then.
And how many years were you with the DA's office?
Almost 3 years.
And then you left and then went to Butler Binion.
That's correct.
How long there?
Almost 3 years.
So 6 years out of law school, and then you go to work for the legendary Percy Foreman.
Well, I tell you what, I really hit a home run. Yeah.
How did you get on with Percy?
Well, it was there was another lawyer kind of in between our ages named Bob Tarrant.
Sure.
And he was a top-notch criminal lawyer, one of the 3 or 4 top criminal lawyers at that time. And he was a good buddy of mine. I'd met him when I first became a prosecutor. And Percy knew him very well, and he got in some trouble over some machine guns.
Back when they were frowned upon.
Well, yeah, he felt that he'd been grandfathered in, that he had his machine guns collection legally, but he was nervous about it, so he decided to sell the entire collection. And unfortunately, he sold it to a guy that was cooperating with the ATF, the alcohol, tobacco, and tax people, and they busted him. So Percy volunteered to represent him, and I volunteered to represent him, and that kind of threw us together.
Were you at Butler Binion when this had happened?
I was,
Okay.
and some of the partners in the Butler and Binion didn't exactly like for me to be trying a criminal case and defending someone charged with crime. But yeah, I was still with Butler and Binion.
Now, I'm remembering one story, and it may be apocryphal or not, but at some point or another, didn't Bob Tarrant get in a fist fight with the equally legendary Rusty Hardin?
Yeah.
What's that story about?
Well, Bob's daughter,
Gage?
no, his middle daughter, Nancy, went to visit Sanford Rudinsky. Sanford was holed up in the Rice Hotel, and the narcotics squad of the Houston was watching him very closely, and they were arresting everybody that left his room. Nancy was there with her boyfriend at the time, and they arrested Nancy and charged her with possession of a small amount of pot, and it just drove Bob nuts, and he shouldn't have had. He represented her in that trial.
Okay.
And during that trial,
Was Rusty prosecuting?
Rusty was the prosecutor. Rusty came up to him during a break in the trial. The judge's still on the bench, but the jury's out, and Rusty comes up to him and leans over at him and says, "You know, you're just scum." Said that to Bob.
To Bob?
Tarrant. Yeah. And so Bob, whap! But he was sitting down, and he didn't really get a lot of whap behind it. And Rusty said something like, "Is that all you got?" Well, the judge charged Bob with contempt of court. We got rid of that judge because you can't try the contempt in front of the same judge it happens. We got a decent judge come in.
Who was the judge?
I can't remember his name. He's from Corpus Christi.
Okay.
And he came in and he saw what was going on. And at the end of the trial, he said, "Well, you know, Mr. Hardin deserved getting punched, but I can't let it go by, so I'm going to fine you $50."
All right, so I got to talk. Look, Dick, you truly are one of my heroes. No,
Thank you. I appreciate
no
that.
ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you would have no way of knowing this, but I remember when I was a law clerk for Judge Onion on the Court of Criminal Appeals, you and Lewis had just opened up DeGuerin and Dixon, and there was a nice engraved announcement sitting on Judge Onion's desk, and I thought, man, those are two really good lawyers there. So let's harken back, though, to Percy. Give me 2 or 3 things that Percy, I mean, it's a world of experience. You can't ever repay that sort of debt. But give us 2 or 3 things that Percy imparted on you that stayed with you throughout your career.
Percy was a fighter. He always fought. And he fought for his clients tooth and nail. And whether he liked them or not, or whether he believed them or not, he was their advocate. And I pass that on to my students. If you're going to represent somebody, if you make that decision that you're going to represent somebody, then it doesn't make any difference how much they pay. whether they've paid everything they're supposed to pay or there's no other consideration other than you give your absolute best to that client. And so that's one thing he taught me, fight. And the other thing is you got to be better prepared than the other side.
Now, Percy, if I'm recalling the lore of Percy Foreman right, his dad was a sheriff? Did I get that right?
Yes, his father was sheriff of Polk County.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how does the son of a sheriff become a wide-eyed criminal defense lawyer? How does that happen?
Percy said it started when he was about 8 years old, and his dad had him come to the courthouse and shine shoes.
Okay.
And so back then, of course, the courthouse was a center of activity in a small town. And Percy remembered that all the people whose shoes he shined, the best shoes and the shiniest shoes were the lawyer's shoes.
Okay.
So he decided he's going to be a lawyer.
Well, didn't he also have a thing? Didn't he also preach? Because of course it was different times, but didn't Percy also lecture or preach on the importance of being able to see the shoes of the jury panel that would give you insight into who they were or what they did or what they were about?
Well, that was one of the things that he looked at. Yeah, but he could size up a person quicker than anybody I've ever known.
Really?
Of. And he sized them up not only on the shine on their shoes or lack of it, but their dress, their way they carried themselves, the way they talked. He just was a genius at that.
And would Percy sit you down in the evenings or in the afternoon to say, this is what I want you to do? Or would he just, here's a case, go handle it and don't fuck it up?
Yeah, that's basically sink or swim. He threw me in and to see if I could swim, and trusted my spirit. And he once said, courage is worth more than brains.
Wow.
And I thought that was quite a compliment until I really started thinking of it.
How many murder cases have you tried, Dick?
I don't know. Probably in the low hundreds.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that your favorite kind of case to try?
Of course.
Why?
There's always one less witness.
Well, Haynes said to me many years later that one of the lessons he learned from Percy was that if you're trying a murder case, you always want to show that the deceased either would hit women or beat dogs, and if you could show a jury panel either one of those things, that the deceased beat women or beat dogs, you probably had a winner.
Yeah, well, that's there's only two kinds of cases, murder cases. One of them is a whodunit.
Right.
He just didn't do it. But the other one is a sumbitch needed killing.
Right.
So that's the category of the sumbitch needed killing.
What was your most memorable trial with Percy?
Ooh, boy.
Now, did you try many cases with Percy, or did he have you had your own docket? How did that work?
I didn't try that many with him, although I did try some. Of course, we tried the Bob Tarrant case, and that's when apparently I impressed him enough for him to hire me.
Okay.
But and then we tried a few cases after that together.
And
but
what
for
was
the most
that
part,
like?
He generally would let me do the work.
Okay.
He damn sure let me do the preparation.
Well, of course.
But he would just turn me loose, frankly, and then he might critique me, but we didn't sit down and have a fireplace chat after the cases.
And how many years were you were with Percy? 12 years?
12 years.
That's a long ass time to work for Percy Foreman.
Let me tell you what. It was actually it was fun every day.
Okay.
He was smart. God, he was smart. You couldn't fool him. I mean, I knew everything I said to him had to be absolute truth, whether it was embarrassing to me or I'd done something wrong or not. I mean, it had to be the absolute truth because he could see through any kind of falsification. And he was also a bit penurious,
All right. For the viewers at home, including me, what the fuck does that mean?
It means he was cheap.
Oh, okay.
And I was on
Haynes
salary.
must have gotten that from him because Haynes was tighter than Dick Hatt's band, but that's another story.
You know the story about one time I went to Haynes to see if he'd hire me.
I did not know that story.
Oh, I did. Yeah. So after I left the DA's office, and I was with Butler and Binion, and I wasn't happy because I was representing insurance companies, which will kill your soul. And I went to Haynes. I said, "Look, I just can't stand representing insurance companies. I'd want to represent people, and how about give me some work?" And he said, "Well, sure, I'll put you on. How much are you making?" I told him it was, again, very low. And he said, "Well, I can't quite pay you that much." So I said, "No, I got a wife and a kid to feed." So I didn't go to work for Haynes. I stayed at Butler and Binion, and I'm glad I did, because one thing that Butler and Binion, it was one of the 5 top big law firms in Houston at the time, did was they taught you discipline in preparation. And by that I mean not just knowing the case, but researching the case and filing pleadings, which most prosecutors have no idea how to do.
Right.
Preparing pleadings, and we had a rule at Butler and Binion, and that is, if the boss came in, it was Frank Knapp, and opened up the file, he wanted to see yellow on both sides.
What does that mean?
Back then, we had copy paper. We didn't have Xeroxes.
Right.
They hadn't been invented yet. And you had to have a yellow piece of paper on both sides, pleadings, correspondence, meaning every pleading that came in you had to answer, and every letter that came in you had to answer.
Gotcha. So when you left Percy, you left for the usual suspects reason, money?
Yeah, I was getting
Why the hesitation, Dick?
Well, the hesitation is that I would have stayed with Percy forever if it had been the money, only the money, because he would have. I was making pretty good money
Right.
with Percy. Some of it was under the table, and but I was getting the cases. The cases were coming to me. My reputation was bringing in cases for Percy to make money off of, and I felt like I didn't want to try to wrestle the firm away from Percy. I mean, he'd been practicing 50 years, and he deserved better than that. I thought it was time for me to be on my own.
So you left in '82.
Yep.
And Lewis Dixon was also working for Percy at the time?
We hired Lewis away from the DA's office. We hired my brother away from the public defender's office, and we hired Charlie Kelly away from the public defender's office. So we had what at that time was probably the largest criminal law firm in Houston.
Right. So you and Lewis strike out on your own?
Well, it wasn't exactly that way.
Okay.
I went in and told Percy that I was going to leave. He congratulated me and said everything's going to be fine. I said I'll stay for 3 months and I'll finish the cases that I've got here. That lasted for about a week.
What changed?
Well, he realized that I was taking cases in on my own, that the cases were coming to me, and he got pretty jealous about that. And he came
Cases that you were going to keep the fee on?
Yeah.
Oh, that would explain it.
Yeah, that's right. It was the fee related.
All right, so I hate to say when you first became nationally prominent, but I remember, well, you had tried a bunch of cases, of course, but by the time the Branch Davidian incident rolled around, you were top of the fold on just about every case. For those of you at home, that we had newspapers that back then, and if you were top of the fold,
We even had 2 newspapers.
we had 2 newspapers.
The Post and the Chronicle.
You were a big deal, but so you were hired ultimately by David Koresh, I guess or you call him Koresh, you would know better, but his mother came to see you.
His mother was the one that engaged me. It came through a previous case that I'd had. That there was a gun case, and there was guy, a lawyer that wasn't really a criminal lawyer, that had been contacted, and he got her to call me, and that it went from there.
But you actually went to the compound, right?
I did
Once or twice?
5 times.
5 times. I didn't realize you went in there 5 times. So what the hell was that like, going into the compound with tanks in the front yards and sharpshooters and good Lord, what was that like?
Well, it was interesting. Actually, if you count the times going in the morning and then going in the evening, it went in twice on each day. So 5 days, that's 10 times.
So the siege started on the 28th, and the fire happened February 28th, and the fire happened on April 19th. When were your visits to the compound?
I first got in March the 28th.
So it'd been going on a month. Mm-hmm. And what was your goal in entering?
To show Koresh that we could had a chance of winning the case. That's the first thing, and that I would be devoted to his defense, and that I would recruit other lawyers to represent whoever else was going to be charged. Remember, when I first went in, what they were facing at that time was the deaths of 4 agents.
Right.
Who we believe, and you know from being involved in it, probably 2 of them were killed by friendly fire.
Sure.
By their own people. And so my goal was to let Koresh know, to reassure him that he would be well represented, and therefore he would be willing to come out and go into custody. I wanted a live client in court. And I convinced finally the FBI that we had that interest in common. I wanted it to end. They wanted it to end. They wanted no further disasters like the original raid had been. So we had common interest. And they eventually agreed to let me in.
So your first date, Dick, entering the compound was March 28th. When was the last time?
April the 4th.
So a couple of weeks before the fire.
Yep.
Did you believe, based upon your conversations with Koresh, that he would eventually come out?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Actually, the last time that I went in was April the 14th.
Okay.
But was just a few days before the fire. And that was because I thought he was going to come out then. And Jack Zimmerman and I both went in that day.
Was Jack just with you on that one occasion?
No, he was with me on one previous occasion.
And he was representing Schneider?
Steve Schneider was one of Koresh's right-hand men. He was a divinity student, a PhD student. And there was one other fellow that was very important. That was Wayne Martin. He was a black guy who was a Harvard Law graduate.
And you believe that Koresh and others would come out. Why? Why did you believe that?
Well, they knew that their position was untenable. There's no way that they could maintain what was going on there with the FBI circling the place in tanks and cutting them off from all communication outside, and their food and water and so forth would eventually play out if they just let it play out. And they knew that they couldn't win, so they were looking for an end to it also. What I didn't realize at the time, and what I've learned later, is that their beliefs were that it would end in the deaths of all of them, but they would be transported in some way to a better life.
Was Koresh rational, logical, seemed to be appreciative of what the hell was going on?
Yes, he was. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, so I can't say for certain. But he answered my questions. He truly believed what he believed, and he was very convincing to all those who followed his interpretations of the Bible. All these people were there because of their religion. They weren't there to make war against Waco, Texas.
Right.
They were there because they believed this particular study of the Bible. They were descended from Seventh-day Adventists. They were a branch of the Seventh-day Adventist, and even a branch of that branch, which they call the Branch Davidians, and that's where the word came from. And there were people that had been there all their lives.
Yeah.
There were kids, there were women, older people, there were men that had been there from the very beginning.
As you remember, you had asked me to represent Clive Doyle back, when they had 85 people in the house, and I said, there's no way I can volunteer my time with an 85 person trial. That'll take 2 or 3 years, and I'm just not going to do that. And then when the fire happened, the same guy, Clive Doyle, you said go see him, and I did. But when I met with Clive, kind of apropos to what you're saying, look, he didn't believe what I believed, and I didn't believe what he believed, but the sincerity just dripped off him. I mean, his parents were Branch Davidians, his uncles were Branch. I mean, that was like Catholicism to him. That was just normal as the day is long. It wasn't normal to you and me, but it was normal to him. That's what he'd grown up with his whole life.
It was very convincing to them that the Bible was the Word.
Right.
And, of course, it takes some interpretation, and what Koresh did was interpret the Bible in a particular way.
So when you learned, you saw him on April 14th, which is 4 or 5 days before the tanks come in and all that shit show. What was your where were you, and what was your reaction when you saw the tanks circling and the, you worship a false prophet and all that nonsense?
Well, of course, I saw the tanks circling. The tanks were brought in almost the second day, I think, of the siege, which started on February 28th. And I first learned about it like everybody else learned about it. I saw it on television, heard about it, and I heard about there being a big shootout in Waco, Texas with some religious nuts, and I bought off on what the general public was being told then, that these were just a bunch of religious nuts that were out to capture Waco.
No, I thought the same thing. I totally bought into the narrative.
Yeah.
But when you learned on the 19th that the tanks were intruding in the house and doing all that, what was your reaction?
Oh, I was shocked, because on the 14th, when I left, I'd come out, and of course had given me a letter saying, here's what I'm going to do. I'm writing my interpretation of the 7 seals, and as soon as I do that, I'm going to come out and go to court. I believed it. He had gone to court before, and had been successful.
Right.
And so I came out, told the FBI that, and I said, I'm really disappointed because I thought today would be the day. They said, don't worry about it. We got all the time there is. I didn't know that at that very moment, some of the FBI supervisors were in Washington, D.C.
Meeting with Janet Reno.
Meeting with Janet Reno and convincing her that the children were in danger. I never saw anything that suggested that. The kids were all loving and the parents were all loving, and at any rate, she was being sold a bill of goods. And then on the 19th, I was about to start a trial in Denton, Texas. And I came back from my morning run, and my wife called me in the hotel room, said, turn on the TV. And I turned on the TV and I saw that the tanks were poking holes in the building. And so I called my contact in the FBI.
Was it Sage? Who was it?
No, it wasn't Sage. This was Bob Ricks.
Okay.
He was one of the 4
Right.
special agents in charge. And I said, I see what's happening. This is the day. I'll come down there. I'll go back in and I'll bring him out. He said, we don't need you anymore. And so I went to court that morning in Denton. I told the judge what was going on, that I needed to be there, that maybe I could help. My co-counsel, the judge seemed to be reluctant to let me go because we had a jury we were getting ready to pick. And my co-counsel said maybe he can save some lives. And so the judge let me go. I drove from Denton, Texas to Waco, Texas. And by the time I got
that 3 hours?
It's a little bit longer than that. And by the time I got there, the place was burned.
Wow. Because I think the tanks were first penetrating the house around
6 o'clock.
Yeah, 6:37. And the fire started happening at 10:30, 11, something like that. Did you ever foresee, was there ever a suggestion, Dick, that the Davidians would use fire to keep tanks away, or they would set a fire? Was there ever any discussion of that, to your knowledge?
In front of me or in front of Jack Zimmerman or anybody else that I knew of, was there ever any suggestion that there was going to be a mass suicide? In fact, I think Koresh cared too much about himself to think of suicide, and particularly suicide by fire.
Yeah, that's not the way you want to go out. So how could that tragedy have been avoided?
You know, after the fire, the FBI said our people were getting tired. We didn't have the resources to keep up this siege. All they had to do was have a little patience, frankly. They could have built a chain link fence around the place and just waited until it was over, instead of going in there aggressively with tanks and tear gas, knowing that the kind of tear gas they're throwing in there, the kids had absolutely no defense against. The adults had gas masks, the kids didn't.
They don't make gas masks for kids.
No.
Yeah, you and I might disagree a little bit on the whole fire thing, because during the trial, the FBI, we learned the day before we got to cross-examine the agents, but the FBI had these little stealth listening devices that they had placed in areas where they could overhear Koresh and Schneider having conversations. And during those conversations, you can hear Koresh instruct others, if a tank comes, set fire to that portion of the house, because the only thing a tank driver is afraid of is fire, because they're sitting on 400 gallons of diesel or whatever it is. You can't really hear, it's cloudy, but if you want to hear that, you can. But the FBI certainly believed that, because as you probably know now, one of the things they did on April 19th was put these FLIR planes, these forward-looking infrared radar planes, which detect ignition and heat. So they put the planes in the air to prove that they didn't start the fire, because they would have these grainy black and white videos that you've seen which show where the ignition was. So I believe the Davidians started the fire, but not as an act of suicide, but as an act of keeping the tanks away.
Yeah, well, another twist on that is what I was told by some of the people that I interviewed after the fire, was that they made Molotov cocktails to throw at the tanks.
Yeah.
And so I think that some of that talk, or maybe all of that talk, was misinterpreted, and it meant that they were going to defend themselves with fire.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but one of the first two places the tank went was one over the door to the bus, the underground bus, because they knew women and children would seek shelter there, so they ran a tank over there to lock those people in. And then the second was in the cinder block room, where so many people lost their lives, they collapsed that door so you couldn't get out. I mean, in my view, the FBI murdered those people. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Call it voluntary manslaughter, call it murder, but they killed them.
When they were hitting the building with the tanks, it was shaking the building to its foundation.
Sure.
The stairs, the inner stairways collapsed. So the people that were upstairs were trapped upstairs.
Well, one of the other things, the obvious things, is they put the planes in the air, right? But who did they not notify? Oh yeah, the fire department.
They kept the fire department away.
Yeah.
The fire department came out there, and they wouldn't let them pass the gate.
Yeah, we went out there. I went and saw because you called me out on the 19th or I guess the 20th and said that Clive had survived. Would you go see him? And I kind of said, yeah, okay, but I ain't guaranteeing.
Well, you didn't say okay right away.
No. I wasn't
convince
anxious about it. I was not, because I still bought into the narrative that these were a bunch of child-abusing crazy ass. But I wanted to go to Parkland Hospital because I was a Kennedy conspiracist, and Parkland, how jacked up I am, Parkland always had sort of a romantic place in my skewed up brain, and that's when I went to saw Clive, and I realized what he believed was what he believed. But point of it is, I saw him on the 20th or 21st, and then on the 24th or 25th of April, Judge Smith, who would later lose his bench, opened the compound up, and we went out there. I went out there, and the smell of that place I'll never forget the smell of that place.
Yeah.
Just fucking unbelievable.
When you cook, burn that many people, it's going to be awful.
Well, you have a relic of the fire. Tell our listeners about that, and I'll get a picture of it and post it by the time we get to say.
A friend of mine who's a sculptor went out there, I don't know how long after the fire, but he found the oil pan that went to David Koresh's Camaro. He also found an old wheelbarrow, and he put all those together in a sculpture that's in my backyard right now.
All right, so one of your most famous cases is Robert Durst.
That's a big change.
Well, so Durst was, I guess, the centimillionaire, billionaire, cross-dresser. I don't even know how to characterize Robert Durst.
He was just an unusual guy.
He was an unusual guy, and the Durst family, at the time at least, they owned more real estate in New York, in Manhattan, than any other family, including our 47, including the Trump family.
There's a picture on a New York magazine cover of the 5 people that owned the most real estate in New York. One of them was Durst's father, another one was Trump, and then there are 3 others I don't remember.
Well, tell us set the stage for representing Durst, Dick.
I got the call before he had been captured. He was a fugitive. And a friend of mine, Michael Kennedy, had been contacted by the family who were concerned about him because he was on the lam from what apparently was a murder in Galveston.
Now, Michael Kennedy, is Michael still alive? He passed away.
No, he passed away.
But he was a likewise legendary New York lawyer. Kind of was, I think, maybe Chicago 7. He had a bunch of.
He was involved in Chicago 7. He was involved in the Maisley Brothers, I think, the pornographic thing out in San Francisco. He was
Partner of High Times magazine, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
Advertising way before its time. Also represented Ivanka in the divorce. One of the Trump
Ivana, yes.
Ivana. But anyway,
I've got a story about that too.
Iconic New York lawyer calls you because it's a Texas case and you're the guy.
Yeah.
Take it from there.
Well, he called me and wanted to know the lay of the land and Galveston and all this, and then when Durst got caught in Pennsylvania, he had me fly up there to kind of as a part of the beauty contest of who he's gonna hire, and I did. And Mike Ramsey was also one of those, and there were a couple other lawyers that didn't make the first cut. But it was between Mike Ramsey and me, and his wife didn't want me because I had come from Kennedy, who she didn't trust, and he wanted me. She wanted Ramsey. So what Durst did, he said, okay, well, I'll just hire both of them.
He had the money.
He had the money.
So for those at home that don't understand the history of this, so Robert Durst, extremely wealthy, kind of to put it politely, the black sheep of the Durst family. He moved to Galveston, I guess pursued the identity of a woman? Did we cross-dress, and what was that about?
Was Janine Pirro was the district attorney of
It's all coming full circle.
Westchester County, and she was going to run for attorney general, and she needed a case and so she dug up this old case of where Durst's wife had disappeared.
Right.
Nobody knew where she was. And so she started threatening to convene a grand jury and get Durst indicted. And Durst panicked and ran. Since he had kind of an unusual thought process, he decided that he would pick Galveston, Texas, which was at the end of literally at the end of the road. And he would go there and hide out. But
as a woman.
Well, that came after he decided that it would be too difficult to hide his identity because he had a deep New York accent.
Okay.
And so he decided, well, I'll just be a woman, a mute woman, so I won't have to talk. And he would write.
Well, we need more of those. Sorry.
So he wasn't a very attractive woman.
So he assumes the identity of a mute woman, lives in basically a tenement shack.
Well, it wasn't really a tenement. It was cleanly kept, nice duplex, actually quadruplex. And so he rented this cheap,
Well, how much was the rent?
$300 maybe.
How nice could it have been for $300?
Well, Galveston, doesn't have the New York or Houston prices.
Okay.
And across the hall from him was this guy that was had been run out of every place he'd ever lived.
Morris
before.
Black?
Morris Black was an awful person. He had no friends whatsoever. And he'd been asked to leave every place he'd been before. He'd probably killed somebody before. But at any rate, because of Bob's particular mental status, he had Asperger's, which they don't call it Asperger's anymore, but it's on the spectrum. And he couldn't ascertain people's feelings.
Okay.
He couldn't. He just didn't have the way that most people. You look at them like you're looking at me right now, and I can kind of tell what's going on with
Right.
you. You know, so he couldn't. He didn't know that Morris Black was such a mean, sorry sumbitch, and they became friends.
So why did he kill him?
Well, after he dropped his disguise because the disguise wasn't working.
Okay.
For instance,
So did Morris Black actually find out who Durst was?
Yes.
So he knew that he was this fugitive, air quotes, millionaire / billionaire from New York.
He knew he was a very wealthy guy from New York.
All right, so I give up. Why did your boy Robert Durst kill Morris Black?
Well, he didn't.
Well, how did his
Jury
head?
said not guilty.
Well, no, they said he was not guilty of murder. They didn't say they didn't kill him.
Well, he died as a result of a struggle over a gun,
Okay.
and the gun went off accidentally.
So again, everybody at home may not remember this bit, but after the struggle over the gun and Morris meeting his untimely death, Durst used a little self-help by chopping up the body.
No, he didn't chop it up. He sawed it up.
Well, thanks for clearing that up for us, Dick.
What happened was when they had this wrestling match over the gun, and the gun went off and it shot Morris Black in the bridge of the nose. Bob ran outside. He didn't have his phone with him. He didn't have a phone in the apartment. He left his cell phone in his car, which was several miles away. So he ran down the street to Charlie's hamburger stand, where there was a payphone. He was going to call 911. He runs down there. There's this lady on the phone, and she won't get off the phone for him. And he tries to get her off the phone, and the lady's boyfriend jumps out of the car and runs him off. And he then goes to a neighbor and knocks on the neighbor's door, and the neighbor won't let him in. So he goes back to the house, and by that time, Morris Black's on the floor. There's a big puddle of blood there, and he's obviously dead. So he panics. He doesn't know what to do. He went and got a bottle of Jack Daniels, drank it, and smoked a bunch of dope, and decided he's just going to have to get rid of the body. Now, that's not unusual in murder cases.
It's not?
Well, it's always the problem.
I've tried a few, and I never had any of that self-help before.
Well, not that kind, maybe, but it's always a problem of what to do with the body.
Right.
Okay, so he decides he's going to have to move the body. Well, he can't. By this time, there's rigor mortis, and
Well, let's pause you for just a second, Hoss. If he was actually not guilty, and it was a self-defense struggle over the gun, why not eventually call the police?
Why not call the police?
Yeah, I hate to ask those pesky questions.
Here's a phone call. Say, I just accidentally shot my neighbor, and by the way, I rented this place as a mute woman because I'm running away from New York because there's a DA up there who wants to indict me for the murder of my wife.
Okay.
So the police are going to do what?
Well, probably the same thing the police ultimately did after he chopped his body off, charged with murder.
Yeah.
So there were several lawyers of significance. First off, there's Robert Hirschhorn, who helped y'all pick a jury in that. How instrumental was Robert to that verdict?
Oh, he was crucial.
So
we
put you on pause for a second. I think this was right after Simpson, wasn't it?
Simpson. I don't remember. I wasn't involved in that case, and so I don't remember much about it.
All right. So, but at the time, this was probably the highest profile case in the country going on at that particular time.
It was pretty big.
And people, the outsiders, gave y'all zero chance because the body was chopped up and all the assumed identity and all that.
Right.
So Robert Hirschhorn, who we've had on before, helped me with explaining to the jury how he did his craft here.
Well, we had a couple of mock trials with jurors that would be picked at random.
Now, he's in custody the entire time, right?
He's in custody, yeah. We had pretty good custodial arrangements with the Galveston Sheriff's Office. So we had real good access to him. We had a private room where we could meet and talk and so forth. And so we had mock trials.
You had mock trials where he participated in?
Yes.
While he's in custody?
Right.
Help me with that. How do you get that done?
We videoed him in the private room that we had there, and got permission from the sheriff's office to do that. So he appeared by video.
Gotcha. How many mock trials?
2.
What were the verdicts?
Not guilty.
On both of them?
Yes.
So was the acquittal, when did you believe that you had won that case, or that case had been won?
During jury selection.
Because why?
Because we got the kind of jury we wanted.
And what kind of jury was that?
Well, a jury that would be sympathetic to what actually happened. We had to be open with the jury because we knew that somehow it was going to come in that, number one, he was kind of a fugitive from New York, and number two, he cut up the body and tried to dispose of it.
2 very bad facts.
2 bad facts, but we got jurors who said that they could concentrate on how the death occurred. For instance, using logic with them, whatever happened after he was dead would not change the way the death occurred. If it was self-defense, if it was an accident, the fact that he got rid of the body doesn't change that. It might indicate a consciousness of guilt, but it doesn't change how Morris Black died.
How long was that trial?
I think it was 3 or 4 weeks.
Your role versus Ramsey's role versus Chip Lewis's role. Who did what and why?
Well, we worked as a team. we made a rule early on that we got to let egos not play a part in this. We don't want to backbite each other. We don't. It's just not in his best interest. We've got to work together. That's number one. Number two is we shared the load, and Chip did a lot of the background work on the offense reports and all the reports that we had. Ramsey and I split up the responsibility of what witnesses to take and what to present. We got an agreement from the prosecution and from the judge ahead of time that both Ramsey and I could question Durst. And
Really?
yes.
I've never heard of that.
I took him up to the point where he's sitting on the bed trying to figure out what to do, and Ramsey took the bad part of cutting up the body.
And why the decision to divide his direct? I've never heard of that.
I thought a subtle emphasis on how what happened when he was killed was different from what happened later on.
I mean, that's brilliant, but why would the state agree to that?
Well, because we said that they could both of the prosecutors could both cross-examine.
Wow. I've never heard of that either.
Oh,
Well, I guess it was a pretty good decision given the result.
yeah.
So how did he do on direct and how did he do on cross?
He did terrific on direct. I mean, just absolutely terrific. He did even better on cross.
Really?
Yeah. He was smarter than both of the prosecutors combined.
So you get this acquittal, which was a nationwide not guilty, nobody could believe it sort of acquittal. And then he decides years later to be interviewed by HBO on the show The Jinx.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
All of his life, he'd been looked upon as unusual. He never had been diagnosed. We had him diagnosed for the first time as Asperger's on the spectrum, and he wanted to explain himself. That's the best understanding I have of why he decided to do it, against advice, against our advice. You know, he was fine, he was out, had a nice quiet life here in Houston, and there was no reason for him to do it other than he
Get his side of the story out.
get his side of the story out and not look so bad.
So I got to ask you a question that only another criminal defense lawyer would probably care about, but you do, maybe not the work of your lifetime, but the work of most lawyers' lifetime in securing an acquittal for this guy. And then he turns around years later and effectively confesses to another crime. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I could see that they were going to charge him.
Were you frustrated at that point?
Yeah, I was frustrated. By the way, he was actually arrested before the playing of the final segment.
Okay.
There were 6 segments. The 5th one, the teaser for the next one was pretty strong, and so he got so scared that he left his apartment here in Houston and drove to New Orleans to hide out. Along the way, threw his phone out the window so they couldn't track him further than Beaumont. But if you head toward Beaumont from Houston, you're going to eventually go into New Orleans. And then, so he went into New Orleans to the J.W. Marriott, which is the high-end part of the Marriott chain. And he walks into register under a fake name. He walks into register and goes up to the desk and says, "Do you have HBO?" Because he wanted to see the last segment himself. And they said yes. They said yes, so he took a room. And but before the playing of that final segment, he calls from his room back to his answering service in Houston to check his messages. And of course they have trap and trace on his phone, and they traced him right to that room. arrested him.
He eventually went to trial in California, right?
After COVID.
And he was extremely sick during that trial, if I'm recalling it right.
We thought he was going to die during the trial. It turns out he only died right after the trial.
What was that trial like?
It was not a trial. It was not anything like you and I would ever participate in if we weren't forced to, because all the jurors had masks. All the participants had masks. You couldn't see what anybody was, what their expressions were. That was one thing. But most of the testimony was recorded on video in advance of the trial, so most of the testimony wasn't even live in the courtroom. It was just video. It was not a real trial.
I mean, like deposition sort of stuff where...
It's a different than a deposition. It's more where the judge is there, and it's all filmed on video, but it's preserved. The idea being that so many of the witnesses were old and ill that they might not be able to make it for trial, and therefore they preserved the evidence.
You have been a lawyer for 54 years?
61.
61 years.
Yep.
Your three most important suggestions for somebody that's considering going to law school?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I get asked that all the time, and I taught law school for 25 years. In the class that I taught, the manner in which I taught was different than I ever had in law school. Most of what you get in law school is learning by cases, by studying cases and by rote, remembering the rules and so forth. And I told my students, my course is not a course in law, it's not a course in procedure, it's a course in attitude.
A course in attitude.
So I think, at least for what you and I do, attitude is the most important part. You have to have the right attitude.
And what is the right attitude?
The right attitude is I'm going to win. I'm for this guy or girl, and they're right. And if I'm not convinced of it, I can't convince the jurors. So it's attitude.
Was in my limited experience, of course, I tried a number of cases with you, one against you, and I also tried a number of cases with your brother, Michael, God rest his soul. But the way you approach cases, in my view at least, couldn't be any different than the way Mike approached cases. You were always on the wet end of the spear. The cops were always withholding evidence. There was always part of the story that wasn't being told. There was always something they didn't do that they should have done. I mean, you attacked law enforcement really as aggressively as any defense lawyer I've ever known. Haynes did, but I mean, that was always your default position. Those are lying motherfuckers over there. Your brother Mike, on the other hand, he went completely the other way, and it was always humanizing the defendant. Look at my client. He loves dogs. His dogs love him. Look at the house he grew up in. Look at the family he supports. He went completely. So how did two brothers, but 4 years apart, effectively going through the same lineage, end up with such different worldviews?
Well, we were different in all going through school, but that difference between us was noticed by all the courthouse crowd, which always called him the nice brother.
He was the nice brother. Everybody loved Mike.
Yeah.
Three things you want to tell a lawyer who's deciding what kind of law to practice.
You won't become filthy rich being a criminal defense lawyer.
You might become filthy.
In the eyes of a lot of people, but I think it's probably the most interesting area of the law you can be in. And I think it's more like being a lawyer than any other
Yeah, I agree.
field of law.
Did you always, once you became a criminal defense lawyer, did you ever think, maybe I should go do a PI lawyer, maybe I should do commercial transactions, maybe I should do mergers and acquisitions, taxes. Did you have any hangover about your focus?
Well, not mergers and acquisitions or wills and estates or forming corporations or anything like that. But I did have some hesitation or some thought about personal injury law because that's so lucrative.
Right.
And in fact, Percy wanted me to do both and divorce law. And oh God Almighty, I don't want to do any domestic relations law. I think being a criminal defense lawyer is an honorable profession, and I think it's more interesting. We get to experience vicariously all the bad things our clients are accused of doing, and yet we don't risk our freedom.
Your proudest moment as a criminal defense lawyer?
Man, there have been a lot of them.
Come on, everybody's got one favorite kid. Which one is yours?
How can you say when you have a
All right,
bunch of
your
kids?
top three.
One of the proudest moments was when my dad came to see me argue a case
Oh, wow.
before the Court of Criminal Appeals.
What year was that?
Gee, I don't know. I was still with Percy.
So it would have been before 82.
Oh, yeah. He
And
died in 82.
your dad, I guess, like a lot of his generation, he didn't say, "I love you." There just wasn't that sort of.
Well, yeah, he was very expressive.
Oh, was he?
About his love for me and Mike, and so was my mother.
Okay. All right, so that's one. When your dad came to see you argue a case before the Court of Criminal Appeals, what's another? Durst had to be a top 5 highlight reel.
Well, Durst was one of the highlights, yeah.
K. Bailey Hutchison's got to be a good one.
I keep forgetting about all those other cases. Yeah, really in K. Bailey Hutchison, we got the DA to just turn tail and run. Literally, I mean, he came up to Fort Worth to try to dismiss the case and go back and get a new.
Wasn't my former judge your judge, Judge John F. Onion?
Judge Onion. He was a terrific judge.
Yeah, he was. So, I got to ask, do you like winning more or hate losing more?
I think that's equal. How do you?
I hate losing more than I like winning. I fucking hate losing.
Yeah.
You?
Of course.
Do you remember your losses easier and more clearly than you do your wins?
I do, and I'm self-critical about. I try to examine what went wrong. What did I do wrong? I'm not one of these guys that go and start blaming the judge or blaming the witnesses or anything other than what did I fuck up.
Best prosecutor you ever tried a case against?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I always say it's Mike Atanasio, Halo Boy, in the City Hall Council cases. He was good.
I would say that too. He was very good, but I didn't like him because of what he did to my brother.
No, I know, but he was just, Atanasio was telegenic, he was articulate, he was prepared, he was boy next door with a little better looks. He just, God damn, he was hard to beat.
That was a tough case too.
Yeah, it was. And your darkest moment as a criminal defense lawyer?
Oh, God. Well, a couple of the verdicts that I lost were pretty bad.
Spill the beans, which ones?
Celeste Beard in Austin.
That was tough.
And
Temple had to be tough.
And David Temple in Houston.
If you had to try David Temple's case over again, you just told us that you would always go back and think about what you should have done different as opposed to attack the judge or the prosecutor, the jury, whatever. What would you do different in Temple? You tried it twice, though, right?
I didn't try it the second time.
Oh, well, that's right. That's right. Stan did.
Stan did.
What would you do different?
There's not a lot I would do different. I think there was one, this is really technical, but there was one mistake that my expert made on how the glass in the door got broken out, how it got spread where it was. And my idea was that the door, when he went through the door, running upstairs to see what was going on, he slammed the door back and it hit a cabinet, and that would have spread the glass in a different way. And so I would have attacked the way the sheriff claimed that it was a staged break-in.
Right.
That's one thing.
And the Celeste, is it Blackburn? What was her name?
Celeste Beard.
Beard. What would you do different in that case?
She was accused of having her lesbian lover kill her husband, shoot her husband.
Right.
He didn't die until 4 months later, because so they could run off together. In truth, the lesbian lover did that, but it wasn't because Celeste put her up to it.
So what would you do different?
I think I would have had Celeste testify.
Dick, you have a very methodical, steady approach in a courtroom. You never seem to want to be the center of attention, and I mean that in a good way, in my view. And I remember once we were trying a case together, and you told me, and probably rightfully so, you need to quit prancing around so much. You're making this about...
Well, you do prance.
I prance less now, but I still probably prance some. But why is it important to keep the focus on the facts or the state and not the lawyer or the defendant?
Well, I feel like the focus is on the lawyer. I think that, and that's why even in cases where there's 2 or 3 lawyers representing the same person, I usually insist on being the lawyer that asks all the questions. We didn't do that in Durst, but look at what my co-counselors were.
Right.
I feel like when I'm questioning or listening to to a witness or cross-examining a witness, the focus is on me. And I'm very much aware of that. I think the jurors, the lawyer is the one character in the courtroom that the jurors pay attention to all the time. Another witness might come in, several witnesses and so forth, but it's always the same lawyer.
What do you see young lawyers doing that you wish they would not do?
Not dressing right, for one thing, and not having the kind of respect for the court and the law and the rules and that they need to have. I respect the Code of Criminal Procedure and the rules of evidence and the laws. Those are the rules you got to play by. You don't. I don't want a crooked judge. You might be crooked for me once, and then you're going to be crooked for you, or crooked for somebody else. And I want a judge that's going to follow the law.
Do you think the quality of the judiciary is better, worse, the same than it was 20 years ago?
Well, old people always say, I wish it was the way it was back when I was young. I think the quality of the judiciary now leaves a lot to be desired, and it's because it's changed so much.
Yeah.
And it changes every 4 years. Every time there's a new election cycle, judges get thrown out because the jurors don't remember their names. In a large place, a large county like Houston, we've got 50 district judges,
at least,
criminal and civil, and the general public doesn't know who they are.
Shit, I don't know.
Unless they've done something to stand out, and that was Ted Poe's.
And Mike McSpadden.
Ted Poe's secret.
Right.
He always did some unusual things and got his name in the paper, so people remembered his name. So the electorate doesn't know who is good and who is not good and who should be elected and not elected. In a small county, that's not the way it is. Everybody knows about the judge.
Yeah, in my view, the quality of the judiciary is not what it was 20 years ago. A, for the reasons you said, there's just not enough continuity and not enough seat time. But B, the life experiences. I mean, when I first was a baby lawyer, we had all the judges were World War II guys. They had actual real world experiences that helped them, for better or for worse, make them better judges, or judges that could decide issues, that cared about the process. And even some of the judges that I couldn't stand back in the day, the Godwins or the Stricklands or whomever, they were serious about their craft.
They were serious, and they were career judges,
Yeah,
and
it mattered to them. Now, they
cared
didn't
about
do my
being-
thing, but they goddamn sure gave a damn about it.
and they cared about being right.
Yeah. And you don't see that, at least in my old decrepit way. Michael Berry, questions of Mr. DeGuerin?
Dick, what does Cogdell do well, better than others as an attorney?
He has a TV show.
And apparently people are watching the damn thing.
Oh, that's what I heard.
I didn't know till he said something nice about my son. He was over at the house, we were smoking cigars, said something nice about my son Crockett, and I start getting people hitting me up with messages that, Crockett is famous now. And I said, how's he famous? Cogdell's done this on his podcast. I said, Cogdell can't make people famous. Apparently he can.
Well, seriously, what he does is what a good defense lawyer should do. He fights for his client. He gets in front of a jury, and the client is the one that's the most important person in that courtroom.
Now your turn in the hot box.